keeping with that tradition, we sponsor this contest. If you know a young ham, has to be licensed ham, who's 18 or younger, who is giving back to the community in some way. It could be helping elderly people. It doesn't have to be ham-related, what they're helping them with. Helping senior citizens, helping military personnel in some way, offering communications at local neighborhood events, parades, marathons, as we all do and we all know, etc. You know somebody like that. This year's winner, I will tell you, for the last 10 years, and he's 16 years old, has been doing work with the community, putting in community service work with his ham radio. That will be this year's winner. So it's open again starting next week. You can recommend somebody. Again, informal, no applications. Send me an email and tell me why you think this particular youngster deserves to get that award, because we want to encourage the service aspect of what we do as well. Oh, and I also should point out, we've got Skylar sitting here, who is going to be a victim, a participant, next week at the Youth Forum in Dayton. And not only that, but when he's through with the 3 hours with me, of both of us talking for the 3-hour forum, we take no break in between, and he and I have been invited to the QCWA forum, which begins immediately afterward, because he has an application out for a scholarship, which is another aspect of the youth activities of QCWA, and I'm going to introduce him as a perfect example of why scholarship money should go to these young, talented people. So you've got him right here from your local area as well. Okay, Divyan, I'm proud to turn the microphone over to you.
Oh, all right. Hello, everybody. My name is Divyan Mishra, Kilo Delta Zero Oscar Echo, and I'm here to talk about my engineering project, which I did with Professor Sriram Sankarnarayan at CU Boulder, who is a computer science professor, and how I'm willing to incorporate AM radio with this project. So let's get right into it. In today's society, we are surrounded by our devices and our appliances. We want to have that free time with our families and friends. However, these devices keep breaking upon us, and we're ended up trying to fix them rather than having that great time with our family. For example, this last winter, our family heater broke down, and my family was forced to run around like a headless chicken trying to find a mechanic. Now, instead of having a great Christmas Eve, we were trying to fix this dang heater. But the lesson learned was that instead of having that great occasion with my family, we were trying to fix this problem with this device. But can technology fix this problem? Can technology turn us from more of a reactive state in which we react to our problems into a more proactive state in which we know when our problems are going to occur beforehand? And the answer is yes. And that is why I'm here today to talk about Probot. But in order to understand Probot, we need to understand some background information. Data in motion is the concept in which fresh data is generated from sensors and sent to a centralized entity, and the entity sends that data elsewhere. I believe that we have so much data roaming around within our devices, and I believe that we're not taking the fullest advantage of all this data. And in addition to this data in motion, I believe that we should do analysis on this data. I think that if we do analysis on this data in motion, we can predict problems that could occur within our devices ahead of time. So, what is Probot? Probot stands for the Proactive Bundle of Things. I termed this name by listening to the word IoT, which stands for the Internet of Things, thus Probot. But the main functionality of the system is that there are sensors which are communicating to a centralized computer, which in this case is a Raspberry Pi. Then that Raspberry Pi does analysis on that data, and so it sends that data to the cloud, and the cloud sends that data to a server from which analysis is done on that data, and that analysis is shown to the user on their phone via a mobile app. And the beauty of this system is that it's not just going to be able to be implemented in one place. This system will be implemented in every possible place. For example, within our homes, within our appliances, such as refrigerators, What if our refrigerators could tell us when food was going to rot, or if there was something wrong in the refrigerator? This system would be implemented in our cars. What if our engines were telling us that there was something going wrong in the exhaust system? And also in our offices, where our printers and our computers could be telling us information about whether or not something's going to break down. So these are all examples of how the system could be implemented in the future. But in order to test the reliability and existence of the system, I honed in on one aspect, which is the temperature system. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to gather temperature data within my home and do analysis on that data and show this data on a mobile app. But in addition to this temperature system, I've implemented my own home security system, which I'll explain later on. And in order to make this project successful, I have used many components. I have used a Raspberry Pi and an Arduino, and I've integrated them together. Now the difference between a Raspberry Pi and an Arduino is that a Raspberry Pi has its own operating system, and you use Python to code it. While on the other hand, an Arduino is hard-coded with Arduino C. And the great thing about these two devices is that they're compact, and they're really well integrated with sensors, which is the whole point of my project. But in addition to these computers, I have used the cloud. And two reasons why I've used this cloud is because, one, it's highly affordable. You can use a gigabyte every month for just 1/10 of a cent. That is really cheap. In addition to this, in the future, I will be able to implement a bunch of virtual machines with a bunch of cloud storages in order to produce a Hadoop on-demand system in which big data analytics will be running on data in motion. Now we come to what I have done currently. What I have done is I have a temperature sensor attached to an Arduino. Then the Arduino is sending that temperature data via radio frequency to a Raspberry Pi. And that Raspberry Pi looks for set patterns in that data. And that data is sent to the user via email and also stored on the cloud, in this case Dropbox. And I've also implemented my own home security system in this case. And this is specifically how I've implemented ham radio in my project currently. Right now I'm using radio frequency at 433 megahertz between the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi to send temperature data back and forth. And there are three reasons why I think ham radio is becoming really important in IoT. The first is reliability. And the second, most importantly, is in emergency situations. What if your Wi-Fi network in your home just stops working, which is pretty frequent? Then we can use radios to send data elsewhere. And third, security. We can encrypt our messages, such as in my project, my temperature data, by using these radio frequencies. And this is how I'm willing to implement radios in my project. So when I detect a change in temperature that is very sudden, and it could cause, such as maybe a fire in your house, that data could be sent from a radio to a nearby first responder station via a radio. And how will this be done? Well, there are modules being implemented in Raspberry Pis which are called SDRs, software-defined radios. And the problem with these SDRs is that they're only being used to scan for radio messages, not to transmit radio messages. But according to my research, there's a library in Python called RPITX, which is a library that you can download from GitHub, and then that library can be used to transmit audio files and photo files by using the radio frequencies, which is extremely useful in this case, especially when their house is being burned down. And this is just another simplification of what I have done. As you can see, the temperature sensor is talking to the Arduino is sending that data through radio frequency to the Raspberry Pi, and that Raspberry Pi is sending messages to the end user via email, and also using the cloud. But some of the problems that came up during this project. The first problem was the home security system. So as I said before, I've implemented a temperature system, which is trying to do more research on the proactive side of things so that we can figure out what's going on in our homes. But also I decided to implement my own home security system. So what I have done is I've used a passive infrared sensor with a camera module. But when this project began, I decided that I would just use a passive infrared sensor. Now the problem with this was that even if there was a slight change in your house, the sensor would think that someone went by or movement was detected. And the next morning I woke up and there were thousands of emails in my Gmail account. So obviously that was flawed. So how did I solve this? Well, I implemented a camera module alongside with this PIR sensor. So now what happens in the code is that there's a PIR sensor, it detects the movement, the camera is triggered, the camera takes multiple pictures, the camera evaluates those pictures for pixel differences, and then those pictures are sent to the cloud, in this case Dropbox. So that's how I figured out this problem of detecting movement. But the second problem was more programmatic. What was happening is that I had this huge program that had this huge while loop that said that take a picture, evaluate the pictures, and then store that to the cloud. Now this took a whole 15 seconds to implement in just one trial. Now the problem was, once my system detected movement, the system was basically frozen for 15 seconds. So if another person came by, the system would not detect that movement. And I obviously had to solve this problem. So what I did is I used a Python library called Pika, which basically does multiple programs at once on the same CPU. So now what happens is that there's one program that has a PIR sensor detecting movement, and then the camera's triggered, the camera takes multiple pictures, then there's a queue in which those pictures are stored, then there's a second program that takes those images individually, asynchronously, from the queue, and evaluates those images by pixels. And depending on if there's a subtle difference in those pictures, it will send them to the cloud and warn the user by email. And it will also send the user an analysis of the temperature in their house at the same time. Now the system is much more reliable and much more efficient and much more process intensive, much less process intensive. But 3 questions that came up during my research project. One, can we rely on these sensors? What if these sensors send us false data? Thus, our analysis will all be wrong. And second, can we rely on cloud storage? One big issue that came during my project was that the Raspberry Pi, about 20% of the time, was not able to connect with my Dropbox account, which was highly flawed, because all that data was then lost, which couldn't reach the cloud. So that brings up some questions of whether or not cloud storage is the best option for storage. And third, can we rely on predictive analytics? What if the analysis on the server tells us that something is going on, such as your house is burning down, but then your house is actually fine? So these are just some questions that came through my research. And now, most importantly, what am I working on right now? Right now, I'm trying to implement a complete system in which my Raspberry Pi sends data to the cloud. The server then gets that data from the cloud and evaluates that data for set patterns. And there will be an app on your phone which can display that analysis that your server is doing via augmented reality, which is basically real images overlaid with fictional depictions and characters. And this will be a very interactive way of showing this analysis in a neat manner. Some future implications of this project. So right now I'm working on this temperature sensor network, but what's next? I believe that one big step forward would be in the healthcare system. What if such system were implemented within our bodies, in which we would know exactly what would happen in our bodies before it actually happened? It sounds cool, right? But how would this be done? Well, using a digital pill. Same type of idea as what I'm doing, with a bunch of sensors inside our body sending data to a centralized computer, and that computer sends that data to the cloud, and analysis is done on the cloud, and you can view your data, what's going inside of your body, on your phone. Now that is very neat. But something that is very amazing is that currently BMW is focusing on implementing terabytes and terabytes of data into their cars, where data will be sent from car to car and from car to their huge server. And this is explaining how IoT is becoming a huge thing in today's world, where data in motion should be taken advantage of with the full system. And these are the people who I'd like to thank: my mentor, my SRS teacher, my parents, and especially Carol Perry for giving me this wonderful opportunity, and Rip and Ellie Van Winkle, who I learned a lot from, and I love them. And I thank all of you for being here and listening to this presentation. Thank you. receiving signals from the Arduino, and this is kind of messy, but the Arduino here is connected to this temperature sensor, and the Arduino uses this RF transmitter to transmit the data to the Raspberry Pi, and the data is received, and then this data is then sent to the cloud. So this is just a prototype that I've made. It is working. I'm working towards implementing the entire project, but yeah, and I've 3D printed these cases. If you want to take a look, you can come by.
At the end, if you want to take a look, he'll leave it out there so you can take a look at it. Thank you, Vivian.